Good evening. Welcome to Inside Texas Football. I'm James Hayden. This is On the Horn, episode 3. They let me come back again. I took over a week-long hiatus. Had to work on Tuesday night at my part-time job, so hey, subscribe so then I can start doing this full-time. But we're going to be diving into a lot of topics today. We've still got a ton to talk about tonight. We're going to start by breaking down the Cotton Bowl. And then we're going to talk about players who left, who's coming back, talk about Sark's legacy, Quinn's legacy, reflect on some of the things that happened with the decisions being made in the past few days. We had some huge ones, obviously. We have a jam-packed show, live from my parents' house in my little brother's room. So let's get into it, folks. I appreciate y'all joining. And to start, so let's just talk about that game, It's been almost a week. We've got some time to decompress, maybe be a little less emotional when we talk about this game. I was firmly in the belief that Texas was going to lose this game. If you remember, I don't know how many of you are recurring viewers at this point. It's a new show, but I picked Ohio State to cover. I picked Ohio State to win. That did end up happening, but second half, third quarter was where I fully bought in. The kid in me was like, oh, they're going to win this game. And I really thought they were going to win. If you did happen to listen to my show, I stated that I thought a few things that Texas had to do to win. And they did those things. For starters, since it was a loss, we start with positives. A great thing that they did was on the defensive side of the ball, they only gave up 81 yards rushing, which is great. They did their job in terms of facing one of the most expensive backfields you've probably ever seen in college football history, on record, an NIL era that we know of, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. So they did a great job only giving up 81 yards rushing. And they gave the offense chances, which was what this defense did all year for Texas, was always giving them chances. No matter how backed up against the wall they were, they really, set the offense up to stay in that game, which was awesome to watch, considering that was the final stand for a lot of those guys. Jahdae Barron, Barron Sorrell, Vernon Broughton. I don't want to forget anybody. Alfred Collins, of course. Andrew Makuba. That was just, such a great defensive stand by those guys. They played amazing, for the most part in the big areas that I kind of highlighted. I said, what was number one? Jeremiah Smith. They did exactly that to a T. If you remember in the Rose Bowl, Jeremiah Smith had that quote after he absolutely burned Oregon, torched them. Those guys forgot how to play defense for an afternoon, it seemed. And he said, no one can stop me. He said to Chris Fowler, I don't think anybody in the country can stop me. And if only Texas had won, that would have been such a great meme, because he went on to have one catch for 3 yards, which was Texas doing their job. That was the defense doing their job. That was Jahdae Barron doing his job. Manny Muhammad, after he had received some criticism against ASU and against Clemson, most of those guys had a solid night against Ohio State, against a loaded receiving corps, against the best offense they had ever seen. And they even went on to get an interception. David Binda, Mr. Texas himself, the 6th year, he also recently announced that he's going to enter his name into the draft as a graduate. That was kind of a sad moment, transitional period. That's a day one guy. That's a Texas Longhorn for life. It was so cool seeing him get an interception. That defense played great. That was a great defensive performance for the most part. I want to start out with positives. Because I'm going to miss these guys, as I'm sure you are as fans. We're going to miss these guys, these seniors. But there were some areas where they could have improved. But the defense always in 2024 for Texas did everything they could do. For most games, even wins or losses, they left everything out on the field. And they did it again in this game. Holding Jeremiah Smith to 1 reception for 3 yards. It was the worst game of the season. And they didn't allow anything over the top. We said that going into this game, that Texas doesn't allow anybody to get by them. Michael Taaffe, thank God he's coming back. We'll talk about that later. But Jahdae, Michael, and Makuba, you're not going to beat that communication line. Those guys are veterans, paired in with those great athletes that Texas has on the back end. Just the communication level, they talked about it all year. And Blake Gideon did a great job as secondaries coach after last year receiving a bit of criticism. and they really turned things around. And they did not allow the big play. There was never a hole in the defense, even against Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate, I think, had 81 yards or something like that. There was no 100-yard receiver. Will Howard had a solid game, but not a great game. And like I said, they forced a turnover, 81 yards rushing. They gave the offense chances. They got 2 sacks. And I go back to that third quarter. What I saw when I really felt like the tide was turning, where it seemed like, oh, Texas is comfortable, they're playing their game, is when Vernon Broughton got that sack. And I believe it was a 3rd and long that had put Will Howard in. And Vernon Broughton really, turned into a game wrecker. Him and Alfred Collins made themselves a lot of money this year. And, hats off to them. They're going to the league this spring. They both entered their name into the draft as graduates. And, both of them, I think, are going to be, mid-round picks, 2nd or 3rd round even for Alfred Collins. Broughton got that huge sack. And it felt like the tides were turning. And it was like, oh, Ohio State can't move the ball against Texas. Because they really hadn't. They had the one drive. And that's the thing, is it felt kind of similar to the Georgia game with the better offense. They had that one drive. Like, realistically, at the end of this game, Ohio State had 2 touchdown drives. We, of course, know the one touchdown from that play that we will get into soon, that I'm sure everyone's still frustrated about, the strip sack touchdown. But then they had one at the end of the first half when Travion Henderson broke off that halfback screen touchdown pass. But aside from like a couple, 14 of their points being off 2 plays for Ohio State, they had 2 real drives. Now, what I will say, the red zone was something that the defense could have been a little bit better on. We talked about it leading up to this game, that the red zone was something that Texas had to flip on its head. Texas struggles in the red zone on offense, and on defense, they're a solid red zone defense, but Ohio State went 2 out of 2 in the red zone, and that was not a great look to see. Quinshon Judkins had 2 TDs rushing. One was from 9 yards out. The other was just, they bully balled a little bit. And seeing Ohio State move Texas around like that was not the most reassuring thing in the world. But aside from that, like, it's really, if your defense gives up 14 points, like that's a good stand. And then we know what happened at the end of the first half. That what seemed like a corner blitz with Jalen Gilbo off the edge, leading to that halfback screen pass to Travion Henderson. I mean, that was one of those where you go, is this really happening? Like, do I believe my eyes right now? And it felt almost like a vintage Texas moment in the bad way, like in a vintage 2015, 2016 moment where you go, oh, come on, Texas. And I thought it was a corner blitz. Turns out it wasn't. I got corrected for that. That was a casual take by me, by the guys on the day after show. Charlie, Justin Wells, and Joe Cook were on that show, and I thought it was a corner blitz, and they said it was actually simulated pressure. They only blitzed 4, so really it was just people gave PK some flack for that, but really that play was just an unfortunate set of circumstances, I would say. Still maybe kind of a weird call sending 4 and using a DB and pressure on that play. But Travion Henderson also just has like 4.3 speed, high 4.3 speed. That guy's quick. They have some dudes at Ohio State. That's something I think we forget as Texas fans, is when you go and play against an Ohio State, a Georgia, they have the same level of athlete as us, if not better. So sometimes it's just a player making a play like that. But aside from that, that was really just a great stand from the defense, a good performance all in all. I think it was one of their better performances, considering what Ohio State had just done to Tennessee and to Oregon. And, everyone was talking about how great Tennessee's defense was. And Oregon looked like the number 1 team in the country up until they played Ohio State for a second time. So, I mean, Texas really bowed up and, like, stood on business. And people's talk about, like, of course, when Texas goes to the SEC, they played no one. Before they went to the SEC, it's, going into Texas A&M is no cupcake. Playing Florida is no cupcake. Texas took care of those teams. But the thing you notice is even the detractors of Texas in their first year in the SEC, even though they lost those games against Georgia the second time, first time turnovers really skewed that score. But the second time they played Georgia, they missed some field goals. They outgained Georgia. They had a lead in that game. Like, I don't want to say they should have won, because if they should have, they would have, obviously. And I put out something after the game, and kind of in the heat of emotion, saying Texas should have beat Ohio State, which, again, I should remember, If they should have, they would have. But my point is that they were toe to toe with Georgia, right? The newly powerhouse team, kind of taking the throne from Bama in the past few years, with Kirby winning two titles back to back years. So I mean, it's not like it's a small slouch to say, oh, Texas should have probably beat Georgia in the SEC title in their first year going to the SEC title. Then they play Ohio State down to the wire, and really, it's like that's the thing is it's three plays. You change three plays, they probably beat Ohio State, who, in my opinion, is going to take care of Notre Dame this upcoming Monday. But yeah, defense, great. So sad those guys are going. It's sad they're gone. Like, it's sad we're losing a lot of those guys. There are some coming back. We'll get into that later. But that main core, those D linemen, missing Broughton and missing Collins, we'll miss those guys next year. But hey, Texas bounced back after Sweat and Murphy left. Jade is going to that's a heartbreaker. That one might hurt the most with him leaving. But the offense, we got to talk about the offense. Defense did their job. Like I said, they held Ohio State to 81 yards rushing, but Texas only had about, I believe, 60 yards rushing on offense. It wasn't great. The offense actually started out good for the most part. That first drive, they were moving the ball, and then it was I think Quinn just missed a throw, if I remember correctly, on the first drive. And, the red zone struggles, that we were talking about, like Texas being 90th in red zone scoring percentage, 120th in touchdown percentage, that kind of went away. Now, I know it came back at the end of the game when it mattered most, but it kind of, for the start of the game, I talked about Jaden Blue being an impact, and he made an impact, in what ultimately ended up being his last game in Burnt Orange. I mean, he played a heck of a game. And those first couple of trips they made down, the first one was a swing pass, a wheel route from the 18. That's the red zone. 26 is basically the red zone. The second touchdown pass to Blue. So it was nice to see them scoring, in plus territory, which has been coming at a premium for Texas this year. It's not just been a given that when they go down in the opposing team's paint that they're going to score with field goal troubles and red zone troubles. So that was great. Yeah, so then, of course, we've got to talk about the second play that everyone wants to talk about, which is I talked about the screen pass to Travion. That was the first play that kind of just situational football. It's kind of screwing over Texas in the end. The second play, obviously, the first and goal from the one. Quinn Ewers played great. I put that out on the Instagram, right, which if you are not following Inside Texas on Instagram already, make sure to give us a follow at Inside Texas on Instagram and Twitter. But I put out video reactions like right after the game, which sometimes they get me in a little trouble because I'm in the heat of moment. And I said I think Texas should have won that game because I watched that game and it was like Texas coming from behind at first, and then it felt like they literally evened and were right there, like face to face with Ohio State, like we can take this, and then just a couple plays, But I think Quinn Ewers played great. Like, he threw 2 TDs, he threw almost 300 yards, and if you remember on that last drive, he was hitting every throw he needed to hit. He led them on a game time drive down to the 1 yard line. And he played a really good game and a solid game in what turned out to be his last game in the Burnt Orange and his last game in college football in general, despite the rumors about NIL and transferring and all that. But he did miss a couple bad passes. He missed Helm. He missed Golden in the clutch, but led them down to the 1. He was hitting big throws. I think all in all, that was a really good game for Quinn. And the run game, again, didn't do him any favors. It was, just kind of mediocre offensive play, which we saw down the stretch. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later as we get into sort of Sark and Quinn and the offense and the red zone trouble and where that leaves us heading into the Arch Manning era. What do we think about that? How much of it is Quinn? How much of it is Sark and whatnot? But it was kind of the usual for Texas, unfortunately, which how the usual has been in the last month or so with what the performance against Arizona State was. You thought if Texas drops an Arizona State performance, they're going to get run out of the building against Ohio State. Somehow they ran for, 58 yards or something like that and still kept it close. It was still, again, a 2 yard a carry, 3 yard a carry performance from Wisner. And I think Blue had 4 yards a carry, but he wasn't carrying the ball a ton. He was more the pass weapon, which worked. But yeah, the run game was mediocre and the O-line was not solid. As as we kind of feared down the stretch. 3 sacks against Arizona State, 4 sacks against Ohio State. And Ohio State's just been on an absolute tear. They've got 16 sacks in 3 games in the playoff, which is insane. So once again, defense good, offense mediocre again. Quinn was pretty good in his last game. So I mean, there's not much else to say about that game. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those that we're probably going to think about for a while. It'll be etched in the memory of Texas fans for years to come, I would imagine. Same as that 4th and 13 will be in Texas fans' minds for years to come. How they got there, that Arizona State game. And that's the thing, is when I put out there that Texas should have won. Reality is Texas could have just as easily lost against Arizona State. So it really is just, that's college football for you. The ball bounces your way one week. Quinn Ewers hits a 4th and 13 touchdown pass to Matthew Golden, and Arizona State fans are saying they should have won. That should have been targeting. We've all talked about that. So, I mean, I do understand the reality of that, and I might have been a little bit of a homer in that take when I said Texas should have won against Ohio State. But, I mean, I do fully believe that they didn't even play their A game, and they really lost by 7. In actuality, they really lost by 7. They were right down at the 1-yard line, and then we all know what happened. But, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that, as we get into some of Sark stuff and talk about Quinn. We're going to talk about that play call as, in depth. But if you guys want to go ahead and call with your thoughts about the game and any sort of takes you have, anything I missed, or what your opinions are, if you think Texas should have won or if I am off the mark on that one. But for now, we're going to go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor, Luxe.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's L-U-X-E. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
Wow. Thank you, LC. I mean, every time I hear him, his voice sounds more sensual. I think I might want to remodel my bath now. But then again, I live at home, so I might have to run that one by my parents first. Hey, so we got some callers now. I'm going to go ahead and add Tom to the stage, hear what he has to say about the game, if he has any thoughts or opinions. We got a few more callers in here. We'll try and get to everyone, but yeah, let's go ahead and get Tom in here, see if he has any opinions on the game.
Hey, what's going on, James?
Hey, Tom, what's going on, man?
I was just, you were talking about the play calling a little bit. I've been thinking about it the last week. Honestly, I think Sark is kind of the reason why we lost that game. And, he was quoted before. He was saying, he's going to keep calling plays as long as he's, good at it. My question is do you think that we can?
You there?
Yes.
The quote you were referencing. He said, "I'm going to keep calling plays as long as I am decent at it," is what he said.
Yeah, to me, it just doesn't sound like he has a lot of confidence in his play calling, and frankly, I don't. I'm just wondering, are we able to win a championship with that play calling? Obviously, in the biggest games, we've seen him kind of fumble in those big moments. So I'm just wondering if he's going to be able to get us across the finish line as a play caller.
Yeah, I mean, to that, I would say we obviously saw what he did at Alabama in 2019 and 2020. He was able to win a championship in what some have called probably the best or second best offense. I believe it's statistically the most efficient offense, that Mac Jones Alabama team with Judy and all those guys. But, probably second best offense of all time behind Joe Burrow's offense. So that's why he got hired at Texas. We know he can do it. Now, I wonder if maybe he sounds a little reserved more so because he's never really gotten this kind of flack. There are some fans now directly calling out the play calling after that, first and goal from the one thing. And he said he was pretty candid about it. I put out a quote on the Twitter and Instagram. He said, first and goal from the 1 and you don't score, you don't deserve to win. He was very direct about it. I think he knows he has to be better. The red zone efficiency has been a topic of conversation since last year. And I will say, like, while those numbers are glaring, they're in the 90s and the hundreds in red zone scoring and red zone touchdown percentage. Last year, they were in the 90s in pass defense, or I believe 80s. It was not great. Washington tore him up. And Blake Gideon, said he would be better. They said the secondary would be better. And then they were dang near the best secondary in college football this year. So, I mean, it's not impossible with the level of talent you get at Texas and now a quarterback change with Arch Manning that you could see the red zone jump. And if the red zone jumps, Sark's scheme is really good in space. So I think if the red zone play is more efficient next year and they're able to execute and score more, you could see this offense be way more efficient and execute at those levels of some of those, Sark Alabama teams with Tua and with Mac Jones. That answer your question?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
All right. Hey, well, thank you for joining. Now we're going to go ahead and hop on to our next topic, guys, and talk about Quinn Ewers. Obviously, he declared for the NFL draft. Hey, make sure to be commenting, whatever you think about some of these guys giving their takes and opinions, what you guys think. Keep the chats coming and let us know what your opinions are on things I'm saying and what, some of our callers are saying. Whatever you got, let us hear it. That's the whole point of this show. But going to Quinn now. I said he played really good. That was my point. I put a video out on the Instagram. Like I said, my reaction, I said Quinn played great. And I was accusations left and right. I was told I was a glazer. I was doing tricks on it, they were saying about Quinn. I just think the numbers speak for itself. Like, he, again, threw almost 300 yards. He had 2 bad passes, one that was high to Helm and one where he just missed Golden. But other than that, he played great. You had Isaiah Bond dropping balls. So the question is, what is Quinn's legacy? That was a big topic of conversation on episode 2 of On the Horn last week. We'll get to the point where you guys will remember what we're talking about from show to show. But last show I said, what if Quinn wins? What's that mean for his legacy? What if Sark wins? Yada, yada. But for Quinn, so Quinn lost, obviously. He was 27-9 as a Texas Longhorn. That's 4th all-time in wins. He's 3rd in passing yards. He's 3rd in passing touchdowns. So what does this mean, right? If Quinn had won, I think he would have jumped into that Colt Vince conversation, and we talked a little bit about that. Unfortunately, he did not, as we know. And I kind of see him similarly to Sam Ellinger. And I think the way, and you all love the Sam, he's a fellow Westlake Shep, right down the street from me. But I think Quinn is probably in that 4 to 5 range of Texas quarterbacks where you go, this guy was really good. And you're going to remember some of those moments. And especially Quinn growing up a Longhorn, being a Texas fan, being from South Lake. Excuse me, I had to burp right there. But being from Dallas area, he grew up a Texas fan. Like, you can just tell the kid loves Texas, right? Like, you just feel that. He's a country kid, boots and jeans. He likes Texas. He's a Texas quarterback. He looks the part, feels the part. And you're going to remember these years and think about Quinn taking us to our first Big 12 championship since 2009. Whether you say, Arch Manning could have done it, Arch Manning this, Arch Manning that. I don't think Arch was ready, and I think we kind of know that as we saw him, come in for his couple starts or when he was forced in the action against Georgia. But Quinn is going to be remembered, I think, similarly to Sam. You're going to think about him and get a little nostalgic. If you were young around that time, like I was in high school when Sam was in his prime at UT, and also him being from Westlake, it was really cool watching him play. And I remember that, when he won the Sugar Bowl, and it really felt different. It was like, dang, Texas 10 wins for the first time since 2009 it was. And so it was like it just felt so, like when you were a young kid, you really looked up to Sam. And I think a lot of these younger guys are going to look up to Quinn. Maybe older guys, you've seen more football. I've heard people say, he's kind of like Chris Sims, or people have said Applewhite's better. I remember Major Applewhite as the Houston coach. That's my generation. But I think Quinn will get his due in time, because they'll look at those lists in a few years and go, hey, Quinn's still 3rd in passing. Quinn's still 3rd in touchdowns. So I kind of rank him at 4th. I think, like, if he had won a title, shoot, throw him up there with Colt, 3-year starter. winning a title, all that, but shoulda, coulda, woulda, and that's not to slight Quinn. I love Quinn for what it just didn't work out for a multitude of reasons, but there was a lot of great, and if we're living in the here and now, they did lose. He was 27-9, like I said, all those passing stats, and you'll kind of think of, oh man, that red zone play against Washington, that red zone play against Ohio State, really good. Really good, but you won't think historic. And that's kind of where I'm at. I personally am like, I think he's probably a little slightly better passer than Sam. Sam actually had a really good deep ball, but I put those guys, I put out a list, and I had earlier in the season on the Instagram, I had Vince 1, Colt 2, and then I had Sam 3, Quinn 4, I believe. And I think because Sam has that run dynamic is why I would put him a little higher. I just think he can do more in the tough situations. And he was bruised and battered. He fought through it all and played through it all. But Quinn having the injuries, I think, threw him off a little bit. But let's talk about some of the great things, why he is a top 5 Texas quarterback of all time. Quinn at Bama, that win. I mean, you can talk about now and how this year, like, we expected to win the title, this and that. You also got to remember C.J. Baxter got hurt. Isaiah Bond was hurt a lot. And I read those rushing statistics against ASU, and I read them against Ohio State. You can't beat teams in the playoff, especially Ohio State caliber, with 60 yards rushing, with 3 yards of carry. You're not helping out your quarterback. I know Quinn does some, his pocket presence sometimes led him into those sacks, but let's just, this is still the guy who at his best went into Bama and, somewhat handled Alabama. It seemed like that game was not really ever in doubt. Bama got a lead a little bit for a bit there in the third, I think, or early fourth. But Quinn played his best game of his career in Bryant-Denny Stadium. It was the only quarterback in the last half decade, aside from Joe Burrow, to win at Alabama against Nick Saban. So that's no small feat, right? And then you'll also remember the 2 CFB appearances, college football playoff. When I remember when the college football playoff started, I was in middle school. And I don't think anybody ever thought that Texas would get anywhere near the playoff until Sam came around and they had just won the Sugar Bowl. That was when the people really started to talk about it. And then 2022 was probably the next time you even heard that talk. It was not even really in, and people forget that was not even really in the conversation for Texas. Sometimes I joke with the Inside Texas guys I work with that, started a little bit earlier. And, those, the guys I work with are greats in this business. And some of them have been doing it for 15 years, 10 years. Even Joe Cook's been doing it since 2016. And I'm like, man, Joe, what was that like covering the sport in the era of, losing to Kansas on the road and some of those dark moments of Texas. And they're like, man, it was tough. You have it lucky, James. And I really do. I'm blessed. What an opportunity that this is the year I start covering sports media, and it's Texas, in the SEC, and they're ranked number 1. And, Quinn starting out the year 6-0, and it was a good season all in all. And I think the Quinn era should be remembered as a positive. He won the Big 12 in the last year. He threw the most passing yards ever in a Big 12 championship game. There's been a lot of greats in that conference. Graham Harrell, well, he didn't make the conference championship. Chase Daniel, Sam Bradford. There was gunslingers back in the prime of the Big 12. Colt McCoy played in that game. And, Quinn has that record. So that's not, Vince Young played in that game. So that's not a small statistic to slouch at. And I think you also need to talk about how he played through it all. He bounced back. He wasn't himself at a lot of times. And in 2022, he just started out. The kid, it's one of the, like I said, you're going to think what could have been. Because I really think a lot of the problems we saw were mental from being injured. I don't really think he was ever back from the oblique and the ankle this year, because it just felt like he wasn't himself. That guy moving around the pocket in Ann Arbor, that looked like peak, like Quinn had taken the jump, just like we saw in Bryant-Denny, And then I think 2022, there was, rumors of a hand injury, shoulder injury, of course. He got a tough break, and injuries a lot of times, those aren't really your fault. That's just bad luck, man. That's just bad luck, unfortunately, for a good kid who really did right by the program, always stood up for the program, gave the right answers, was the perfect culture guy, the perfect glue guy. These are all just total platitudes, just kind of, I'm just saying generic descriptions, but they're true, the generic adjectives. He was a locker room guy, but he was, he really was. He always said the right thing. He always put Texas first, put the team first. And that's why him and Sark, I think, bonded so much is Sark's first major hit in the recruiting process was getting Quinn, that 5-star transfer, that huge NIL deal. After a 2021 season where they started 5-7 and blew some leads, and people were like, did we even change that much from Herman? And then you get Quinn, and then it's a snowball effect. You've got your leader, you've got your quarterback, and that's the biggest thing you need for a rebuild. And he was our quarterback. Whether he was injured or not, he always battled back. He always gave it his best. And there's some what about that play against Ohio State? Did you see the Quinn detractors when he was falling down, his knee was going to hit the ground, and he tosses it to Trey Wiseman? I mean, that kid wants to win. That kid loves Texas. And, at Arkansas in a gritty rivalry game, a game that you can't take for granted. I mean, Texas fans, we have recency bias. That was a game in 2021 they got routed in Fayetteville. And, Quinn, to end the game, lowers his shoulder, and he's not a running guy, and he's been hurt. Lowers his shoulder, gets that 4th and 1 to seal the game. So, I mean, there's just a lot of great things about Quinn. And by the way, if you guys have anything to say about Quinn, feel free to join, hop on the call, and give any Quinn opinions. Would love to hear what you guys think about Quinn's legacy. But, just to kind of round us out here, and then we'll get to a call about it. I think very similarly to Sam, actually, to kind of tie that whole comparison in. I think he was just sort of like, if you remember Sam in 2020, that year was kind of fake. There's no fans, and they only played 10 games. And I was like, oh, Sark's coming in. I want Sam to stay. I'm like, why isn't he staying? And I think it was just, he grew up a Texas kid, and you go through all that, the trials and tribulations of being a Texas kid, playing at your home school. And then you're like, whoa, now fans are crapping on me. Like, it's Texas fans. I mean, and it's not just Texas fans. It's Ohio State. It's Georgia. I mean, Ohio State fans were dogging on Will Howard all year. Why'd we go and get this guy from Kansas State? And now he probably is going to lead them to a national championship, and then they'll love him in 20 years. Just how it works. Georgia fans were dogging on Carson Beck. That's just, when you're in a major fan base, a lot of money involved, people have high expectations, right? But I think sometimes it can kind of make the players, especially the ones that idolize a school like a Texas, grow up a Texas fan. And then you go there and you're like, oh, now after year 3, year 4, I'm beat up. I'm playing hurt, and fans are, it's never good enough. They want the next guy up. And that happens everywhere, right? And I think it obviously gets exasperated. There's a vocab word of the day for you. Farther aggravated. I think that one means, that's what it means. Don't fact check me on that, but it kind of got exasperated by having a Manning behind you, right? So, I mean, I still remember people saying Casey Thompson, Hudson Card, when Sam was the quarterback. And that's just human nature, of course. Grass is always greener. We all do that. But I think, Quinn at the end, this decision was kind of good for both people. It was similar to Sam. There was just Sam apparently was just kind of, had given all he could give, if that makes sense. Loves Texas, just left it all out there and was like, I don't really want to go through it all again, because it's a lot of work. And, why? And people say the NFL is, just a lot more of a business, and just you just do your job. There's a lot less, going on with, especially now. I mean, honestly, now the NFL might be more stable with contracts in this world of the transfer portal. But yeah, I think it was just, the decision was best for both parties. I just looked at, kind of Quinn last year at Bama, just his enthusiasm, his heart, and celebrating. He's getting excited after throwing touchdowns. And this year there was some of that, but then I look at the 4th and 13 play, and he throws a bomb, and you're like, show some emotion. And Quinn just looks like, man, like, because he knows, like, oh, they're going to grill me if we lose this game. And Sark wasn't celebrating. I think it's just, maybe it's a long season, but the guys just look kind of exhausted. And I think Quinn might have just been at his point where it's like, there's all these numbers being around in the millions or whatever for him transferring. I think he was kind of done with college football, and he felt like he had done his job. I mean, he's got Big 12 champion, Big 12 MVP, college football playoff. I rattled that off. He's going to go down as a top 5 quarterback. And I think he's someone that we will remember in the future. And I hope that people look at him, not too much of the rose-colored glasses, but go, hey, he left it all on the field, and just logically be like, he played really good. He had he never was a guy who had like a 4-pick game and just totally threw a game away. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and add Ty to the stage and see if he has anything to say about Quinn Ewers. Hello? Ooh. You there? Ty?
Yeah. Hey, James. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. You got anything to say about Quinn's legacy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like Quinn Ewers really kind of saved Sarkisian's job. I mean, like if he didn't commit to Texas, does Kelvin Banks and Campbell follow him? All these other guys that decided to transfer or just commit to Texas after Quinn Ewers came. Like he was kind of the catalyst of all these guys that ended up being the core of this team for the last 2 years. So, I mean, it kind of felt like Texas was dead, honestly, in 2021, right? Like they were 5-7. They kept blowing all these second half leads. They couldn't score in the second half. And then, Quinn Ewers decides to come and it's like, oh, wow. Like there's new life in the program all of a sudden. So, I think it's really sad to see like all the criticism he got in the second half of the season, especially after the injuries. Like he was still like battling it with the oblique and the, the ankle injury as well. So I thought he played pretty well considering that. And also the fact that like in their biggest games, they had no run game.
Well, and I think the receivers didn't pan out as we had kind of thought. Like, going into the season, I don't think many people would have thought, oh, Matthew Golden's going to turn into a surefire, second-round pick type receiver. And it was kind of expected that Isaiah Bond would be the guy. And then whether it injuries or whatnot, Isaiah Bond kind of just wasn't he didn't really have a one. And then it turned out to be Golden. And then Helm was the next best, right? And so, Jonte Cook leaving the program, there was just not a lot of stability at receiver. And same with run game. It's like people forget that. Like if you get CJ Baxter on this team, it's probably a lot different outlook for Quinn. If he has a 4 to 5 yard to carry back in major games.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I think he should be remembered as the guy who changed the program, or one of the catalysts of the guys who changed the program.
Yeah, and I think hopefully this Arch Manning era leads to a national title, and people look back on Quinn and go, he was that guy who bridged it from I think Sam was kind of a bridge from the dark era of no 10-win seasons for almost a decade, and then he bridged it to this like, oh, Texas is finally back to competing for national titles, and then hopefully Quinn will be, oh, if it wasn't for Quinn, we would have never won the title, because it did totally change. Now they've got their first number one class for the first time in 14 years or 16 years. So it's all been a lot of good with the Quinn era.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for calling in, man. All right. So speaking of Quinn and Sark and all that, and Sark obviously was always going to bat for Quinn, right? And that was great to see. And people were, of course, saying, "Oh, hey, why are we not playing Arch? All this, yada yada." And Sark basically never even entertained that idea, which is great to see as a player, as a fan. If you're a real fan of Texas football, if you're not a fan of the drama and just only there for the good. Like when Sark would go to bat for Quinn, it was one of the better things to see for a Texas program. He never threw his players under the bus. He never would say, that they were even so much as considering taking Quinn out of the starting position when he had injuries. And, he had some games where it wasn't his A game. He had some B- performances, but that was back to my point is he never had an F. He never had a Carson Beck 4 INT game. My bad for throwing the stray at Carson Beck. Good luck to Miami, but or good luck at Miami for him. But yeah, I mean Quinn did a lot, and Sark had a great quote about it. He was asked about Quinn, and I think it was just kind of the perfect answer from Sark when he was asked about Quinn and like what he's taught him and stuff like that, and what he thinks about Quinn as he reflects on the end of this era. Homer, if you could go ahead and cue that clip up.
Sean Judge, CBS Sports. Steve, obviously Quinn hasn't made a decision as yet on his future, but I'm curious, looking back after 3 years of coaching him, I mean, what do you take away most from it, and what do you think he's kind of improved on the most?
I'm super proud of Quinn, and he's taught me a lot, probably unknowingly to him, because what he went through every year dealing with injury, what he goes through, where I don't know if he'd ever live up to the standards of what everybody thinks he's supposed to be. But at the end of the day, all he did was show up every day and work and be a great leader and be a great teammate. And that's a real credit to him, because human nature in this day and age is to look at Twitter, to look at Instagram, to look at social media and articles written in fan boards and whatever else. And you can ride that emotional roller coaster of whatever you think public opinion could be, and that could be the opinion of 1 or 100 or whatever. But this guy never did that. You know, all he did was come to work every day. All he did was be a great teammate. All he did was work on his craft, get himself as healthy as he could when he was injured, and then show up. And when it was time to show up, and maybe outside of the first 2 games, I don't think he played a game this year 100% healthy. And he fought through everything, never complained about it one time. And I think that's why he has so much respect from his teammates.
Great. I loved that clip. I mean, we put it out on the social media, did pretty well, which, by the way, follow Inside Texas on Twitter, follow Inside Texas on Instagram. We put out great stuff every day. I put out that clip, and I mean, to the Quinn detractors, to even just the overall, you know, kind of pessimistic Texas fans, is anything he said untrue, you know? And the reality is like, every Texas quarterback or quarterback of any major program has these unrealistic expectations. And he kind of chuckled when he said it, like, you know, I don't know if he'll ever live up to the standards that people think he should be, right? But this is, you know, he was a great player who played very good in most of the big games, you know, even while hurt. And that was also what Sark said. Was he ever 100% healthy? Probably not. You know, after that UTSA game, he just looked like a different guy from the Michigan game to what you saw. He got his swagger back a little bit against ASU, against Ohio State even. I think he played quite well. But, you know, that was great from Sark. And that's why I love Sark, because of his culture mentality, because of who he is. And he's, you know, he knows Quinn. You know, he knows him. And I think sometimes we forget these guys are human. They're young, too. You know, Quinn's 21 years old still. After all he's been through, he's still only 21. And Sark knows him, and you know, naturally it becomes like a father figure type thing where you know this guy who's 30 years younger than you. And, you know, it's a group of young men trying to get them to come together towards one goal, being motivated, working hard, and buying into a culture and belief so everybody can succeed. You know, the greater outcome, all this stuff that college football coaches talk about. And it seemed like Quinn really bought into that. And Sark practices what he preaches, right? He could have very easily been like, you know, giving non-answers when asked about the Quinn or Arch question. He always stuck with Quinn. And that goes a long way, because he knows Quinn stuck with him. Quinn came when there was no reason to come, well, NIL. But Ohio State was giving him good NIL package too, as we know, good enough to get him to graduate high school early, right? And he got Quinn to come home, and Quinn committed to him. So he committed to Quinn. And does that mean nothing? You know, it's like we forget these kids are 21, 22, right? Like Quinn, you know, they go through a lot. You know, it's hard to deal with negative comments from, you know, strangers on the internet when you're not even in that space. When you get into a random beef in the Instagram comments and someone says something and you're like, oh, that hurt, you know? And it's like, well, imagine that. And it's hundreds of thousands of people, you know? And unfortunately, Quinn became kind of this thing where it was like polarizing, where half the people were going to dog on him, half the people were going to say good things about him. It was unfortunate. I always defended him because it's just, you know, he's doing a good job. Now, is he Vince Young? No. But how many Texas quarterbacks have been Vince Young or Colt McCoy? 2 for a reason, right? Is Quinn a Heisman winner? No, but he's, you know, he was a top 5 college football quarterback, and he's a top 5, and I mean top 5 this year in the quarterback class, but, you know, and he was a top 5 Texas quarterback all time, right? And when Sarkisian says something like that and basically stands up for his player, someone like Dia Bell sees that. You know, someone like KJ Lacey, these younger kids, they see that. Even Arch Manning. Arch Manning could have left. Arch Manning stayed for 2 years. That type of stuff, you know, he's gotten the Saban formula on culture and how to run. Like, you know, these clips we're seeing here of him hugging the guys, and he's genuinely happy for his players and commits to them. And I've had friends that were on the team as walk-ons and stuff like that, and everything that they say about him is good stuff in terms of the culture and the treatment of the players. And I've talked to him some at the press conference. He's just he seems like he really buys into that philosophy of like family over just like you're another number, you're another cog in the machine. But while that was great, and I just did some Sarkisian praise and stuff, and I love what he's done with the culture. Obviously, we gotta mention they did lose for the second time in a row in a semifinal, and Sark. I think the thing we got to start talking about at a certain point is, he's really got one signature win, and that was at Bama. You beat Arizona State, you beat Clemson, two teams that you're favored by double digits against. It's it's gonna come up in the next couple of years if something doesn't change. That's the point. It's not a problem yet in year 4, really year 2 of being a serious competitor. But when is one going to go his way? When is Texas going to be on the right side of that Washington, Texas, red zone finish, that strip sack finish against Ohio State? There is the facts that they were in the 90s in red zone scoring last year. They were 90th this year. They were 120th in the touchdown percentage. Now, here's the thing. As people say, all right, well, when he gets Arch is mobile, and he's a better athlete than Quinn. Who knows where he's at between the years yet? We'll see. And he'll be year 3 in the system, so he should be making good reads, I would hope, knowing the playbook well. But and maybe I think if things don't improve with Arch, it may be time to have that OC conversation. And like one of the callers said earlier that, talking about that quote, Sark said, if I'm decent at play calling, I'll keep doing it. I would like the standard to be, great. If I'm great at play calling, I'll keep doing it. I don't know if maybe he's just tired of talking about it, but obviously he has his system and it's worked. It has worked. I think his system is better in space. It's a pro style system. It's not one of these veer and shoot college systems that are sometimes so flashy and, easy to the eye, but he loves the pro style. He loves the Andy Reeds. He loves the Sean McVays. He likes motion stuff. He likes eye candy. We know that, but I think sometimes it hurts him in condensed areas when he can't, when those motions and those kind of sophisticated plays, we get a little overcomplicated at times, right? And it seems like guys like Kirby Smart figure it out. He's 0-2 against Kirby now. He's 0-2 against Kalen DeBoer. There is something to be said to that. It seemed like Kirby wasn't really biting on any of that motion stuff. And, I saw some tweets. I'm not going to tell a guy how to call plays. I played JV basketball. Okay. My football knowledge is, I like to say, slightly above the common fan, I hope. But, my football knowledge is not the point where I'm going to talk X's and O's to that degree. Right. But I do think just on a pragmatic level, you go, all right, well, we've got DJ Campbell, 5-star, Kelvin Banks, 5-star, these big dudes up front, they talked about all the starts they've had together. That was a talking point all year. Joe Moore Award finalist, O-line. You're on the 1-yard line, and we do one, halfback plunge with Jarrett Gibson, and then no Arch Manning QB sneak. No, I just think so. Where I come in at it or land on the issue is we'll see how next year goes. Obviously, it's just something to think about, right? Is losing this game back-to-back years in sort of a dang fashion, that could have, well, if we had done this, it's not like they're not right there. That's the thing. It's not like a couple tweaks here and there and they're not in a national title game. And I don't know if they would have won it last year against Michigan. Michigan looked like a juggernaut, and they had some extra advantages on their side with the Connor Stallions. But I don't know. I mean, this year I think it would have been a favorable matchup against Notre Dame. So I mean, it's you're one game away from the title and one play in a couple scenarios away from the title. But yeah, I just think sometimes when you're scheming as an OC and that's your number one job is just being an OC, it's a lot easier to just make that your whole entire job, and you game plan as an offensive coordinator. That's all you have to worry about, right? Sark has to do the culture stuff, be the leader, be the CEO, and then also game plan. And then also on top of that game plan, so much of it is, all right, you have your script coming into a game, and then you've got you're on the fly in a lot of scenarios, you know, and that was just like he ran that play in practice. He said it had worked for him in practice, and you know, and then you kind of, it just doesn't execute the way, you know, you thought it would, right? So that is just one of those things where you wonder, like, is it a little too much on your plate to also be calling the plays? When you are this culture guy, you have to lead everything. You got to recruit. You got to be this persona. I mean, they're basically politicians. I mean, these guys are the highest paid figures in their states at a lot of these institutions. And we know Sark gets paid the big bucks, right? So, like, we know about his contract extension. And you just wonder if those numbers don't improve with Arch Manning coming in, because that has been one of the talking points, that you may be looking to bringing in a guy with some new ideas, at the very least, to try and fix those red zone woes, because it's been a problem 2 years in a row now. But, hey, the number one class is coming in. First time since 2008. I mean, everything's on the horizon for Texas, and this is the most relevant they've been since the late 2000s. The O-line probably should be better at run blocking next year. You're going to have C.J. Baxter. That stuff will help. DJ Campbell came back, obviously. So that stuff will help in the run game, especially in the red zone. I think that was part of the issue too. But I'm going to go ahead and add in a caller here, and we'll see if anybody has any thoughts on, you know, the play calling and potential future stuff with Sark, and what you guys think about maybe OC talk, or, you know, if you like the way things are going with the offense. AR, you there?
Yeah, what's going on, James?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good, good. First and foremost, I just want to thank you guys at Inside Texas. Like I said it once in a super chat, y'all made me a smarter football fan. So,
right on.
Appreciate all y'all's work. But as far as the play calling goes, I was thinking the same thing, and I thought to myself, when Sark and Texas won at Bama, what did he have? He had a run game where everybody in the stadium knew he was going to run the ball, and he could do it anyway. And it seemed like this season, when, like we always say, it's like a broken record, when the running game was not there, it just threw his whole entire play calling out of whack. It felt as if he was coaching with one arm behind his back at times. Now, there's plays where you're just like, okay, come on now. Like the Quinn interception at ASU, that's one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm at that point now where it's like, yeah, let's just let, you know, let's see what happens when we have Arch at the helm, and, you know, see what he does with, you know, all the guys coming back. And, you know, you gotta also, you know, tip your hat to Sark as far as handling the Manning and Quinn situation. Like,
yeah.
What really sold me on Sark was, not only does he not throw his players under the bus, he takes accountability for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he said, "Hey, I should have called a better game." Like, I have very seldom do I hear that out of a college coach.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that really stuck out to me, was like, wow, he's out here, you know, checking himself at times. I just think we're in a really good position, man. Like, number one recruiting.
You said it last week, champagne problems. I started using that. I'm like, that is the exact definition of Texas right now.
Yeah, and could you imagine, you know, James going back in time and you telling yourself in 2016, hey, in 2024, 2025, you're going to be going to the CFP semifinal back-to-back years with the number one recruiting class coming in. You would laugh hysterically.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those guys who was like, it's done. I was like, it's never going to happen. I was like, oh, I mean, now the kids these days won't even remember when Texas was good. And I really like, and then he's done it, you know, and they're right there. So, I mean, and like you're saying, it's like any coach, any play caller, and we've kind of both agreed on that. It's like, if you take away a running game, you are coaching with one arm behind your back, you know? It's like, you don't have a running game. It makes it dang hard to finish in the red zone and just get some consistency on drives.
And then that sweet play in the Ohio State game, I can't tell you how many times I watched that play. I even watched it in slow-mo on the Skycast. If you look really closely, Caleb Downs has already broke the offensive line before before Trey Wisner even has the ball in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's more of like, the play call, but it's another thing when a guy's just making a play.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes Texas fans, we forget that Ohio State's also got dudes like that. Like Caleb Downs is a freak. That guy is probably going to be a first-round draft pick. He could play outside linebacker if he wanted to. Him coming down from the safety position, that's just a player making a play, and then the block got kind of blown up too. But yeah, it's just like their D-line's been eating, and they had 8 sacks against Oregon. It's just one of those things. Like if they had picked up the blocks, and he said in his quote, I forgot to clip on during the show, but he said in his quote that that we've done that play in practice, and it really is like 2 blocks. If 2 blocks had been picked up, that's a touchdown, and everybody's going, "Oh,
yeah,
Sark's the best."
He's go play call. Like
yeah.
it's like
It's really just it's kind of the roll of the dice sometimes with college football. It really is kind of a game of luck. You plan and prepare, but then at the end of the day, it's like the ball. Who could have pinned in a 75-yard screen pass going to the house? I mean, it's just random stuff happens at random times, and when you play against better players, there's better chance that they'll take advantage of any sort of mishap you make or a missed block and stuff like that.
For sure. We'll get there, man. Like we're in good hands. Appreciate it,
yes,
guys.
Sir.
Thank you.
Time for the Archer. Appreciate you, AR.
All right, man.
All right, we've got one more caller, and then we're gonna work towards wrapping this puppy up. Hey, Gerald.
Yeah.
Yo, Gerald.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, you're on the horn.
Me?
What do you got for us? Yeah. Hello?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah. You got a take real quick?
Okay, so I've got 2 quick takes that I'm gonna make. Here, love this. The first one is about Quinn kind of legacy and stands with all of that. In my opinion, a lot of the points that you made that pertain to Quinn's legacy, him being a culture guy, him playing through injuries, him overcoming a lot and kind of some scrutiny from the fan base. In my opinion, I think I said you also have Quinn around 5 and Sam at 4. In my opinion, I think without Sam in those dark days, when it was really tough, I think if you don't have him in there, that could be kind of a cascading snowball effect of, if you had Casey Thompson up in there instead of Sam for a long time, like I really don't even know, in my opinion, if Sark even gets to Texas, how bad that could have gone. Like I think that could have been 4 years of barely scraping by 500, maybe even sub 500. And Sam, production-wise, almost did more than Quinn did with a hell of a lot less talent, and also with a lot less competent coaching, in my opinion. I still think Quinn's legacy is great.
They get taken for granted, because if you think of what if, Sam's not there and what if Quinn's not there. I saw someone say, "Oh, Hudson Card would have played better than Quinn," and it's like, all respect to Hudson Card, but I just don't.
It's not even close. Like in my opinion, Hudson Card to Quinn to Sam. I think maybe I put Sam over there because I think he's the biggest building block to where the program is right now, and without him, I mean, it's anyone's guess what's going on. And my second point would probably be, as you've pertained to it in the show, the red zone efficiency and all that. Let's just say, a little hypothetical here. I know these are, for the most part, kind of stupid, but, let's say Sark's the OC at Alabama for a couple more years, and he rattles off 2-3 seasons of red zone efficiency and touchdown in the 90s and hundreds like we've talked about. Like, I mean, what's that reaction there? And like you said, I mean, at what point, whether it's next year or whatever, if we're getting the same kind of red zone efficiency, like at what point where it's like, at least let's get a co-OC in here to kind of, give a little second opinion as to what we're calling. Because I think in every game that Texas was the most dominant is when they're just using those big bodies, lining it up, smacking people in the mouth. The Florida game, the
Exactly.
OU game. And in my opinion, in that 1st and goal against Ohio State, I would much rather run 4 straight halfback plunges and get stuffed 4 times. Because at that point, then you're just like, all right, they
Yeah,
got
what
us.
can you do? It's one of those things where I think he'll think about that, and he mentioned it. It's like you 1st and goal at the 1, you don't score, you don't deserve to win. When you pride yourself, I mean, Josh Pate had that viral tweet. You pride yourself on collecting big bodies. Like we mentioned, DJ Campbell.
You got to use them.
Yes,
You
these
got to
5-star
use them.
line, at least try. And then if you get got, you go, hey, well, we pinned him at the 1. Unfortunately, I do think sometimes he might get a little cute with it, but like I said, is we're not going to go to DEFCON 1 yet, and we'll see if Arch Manning told overnight you snap your fingers and it's like the secondary from last year to this year, that change. If they have something like that where it's like, oh, now Texas in the top 25 of red zone efficiency, I don't think anybody's going to badmouth his play calling, but we'll see.
No, not at all.
Another couple
Not
years,
at all.
maybe if things aren't working with Arch in the red zone, you might want to look into bringing at least a second opinion. Mario Cristobal hired a guy, just kind of an analytical guy, someone who can give you an opinion to go, hey, let's actually just do a QB sneak here. Whatever, just a second opinion on the offense. But yeah, I mean, I think
second opinion, and that's a lot on your plate. You're having to think about everything during the game, situationally, when to do this, when to do that. Add that on to play calling, and his tendency to a little bit get cute sometimes. Like, I would just love to see, in those situations, short yardage, goal line, all that. Put some extra tight ends in there, and let's just let Arch rip it.
Yeah,
just go for it.
He does love that 12 personnel. But hey, thanks for your call, Gerald. We're wrapping up here soon. I appreciate you calling back again this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a good one. All right, guys, and we'll finish on some good news. Like I said, we're in good hands. Homer's got to get going, and thanks to Texas Homer for producing the show, and thanks to all the callers. But guys, lastly, we got to talk about it. DJ Campbell came back. That's a 5-star guy. He still hasn't hit his ceiling. So while Jade and those guys obviously left, we saw Bond leave, which is kind of uncertain on that one. Golden left. His draft stock through the roof. I mean, this year. Blue leaving, I was kind of shocked with, but that's going to be a stacked running back room. He had a good game. I believe he put up like 900 total yards on the season, or close to 1,000. So he had a good season, and you can see that with a running back. You want to have less tread on your tires, and he's really talented, obviously. Bond is really talented. I just thought because of injuries and kind of lack of production, he might stay or transfer, but the receiver room is going to be loaded. You got Jamie French coming in. You've got, obviously, Wingo will be older. DeAndre Moore will be older. We're going to be fine there. Okay. I mean, we thought last year the sky was falling, and then they rebuilt on up front. They rebuilt in the receiver room, and in the end, it won the running back room even after losing Baxter. So now Blue's gone, but Baxter will be back. You'll have Jarrett Gibson. So those are some of the guys who left. But key returners, DJ Campbell, like I said, that was a 5-star in 2022. He hasn't hit his ceiling. He's coming back for his last year. I think that'll be great. People are excited about this O-line. They think it actually might be better at run blocking because this previous year, the O-line was great, but it was more of a pass blocking O-line. And then obviously, guys, to wrap up the night, we got to talk about our favorite player. Actually, we don't have favorites, not allowed to. But Michael Taaffe, yeah, he's coming back. That was huge for the program. It was also huge for the Inside Texas Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, I don't think he was ever leaving, from what I understood. I mean, he's a program guy. He's living his dream. He grew up a Texas fan, and which is crazy to think he's even in the NFL draft boards now. He's on draft boards now. I mean, he probably would have gotten picked in like the 5th round or something like that, which is, coming in as a walk-on. I don't think he ever anticipated NFL, so he's glad to be back. We saw, those videos of him pouring his heart out in the tunnel, crying on the field. Like, he was distraught after that loss. I mean, he's going to be, I think, leveled up, excited, ready to eat, get after it, improve even more, and show the world why he deserves to be on scholarship and why he was a second-team All-American. But for that, guys, thankful for Michael Taaffe coming back, for DJ Campbell coming back. Good luck to the Horns that are gone. This was a great season. We'll talk more about it. We'll be live at Tuesday at 6 p.m., and we're going to be doing Tuesday, Thursday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please share it, guys. This is a new show. I'm trying something new. Help me pursue my dream here. Hit the subscribe button down there. And thanks for coming along, and thank you to everybody who called in. And please share the show with your friends. Subscribe. yeah, I mean, just helps us out. It's free. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much for coming along. And I'm really excited for what 2025 holds and how we can continue to produce content for you guys. And yeah, thank you very much. God bless. Everybody have a good night.